It was the kind of day where everything was going right. I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop, sipping my caramel latte, enjoying the feeling of the morning sun streaming through the window. Everything felt perfect, like a moment that was too good to last. And little did I know, that's exactly what it was. A moment about to be shattered in the most unexpected way. It all started with a text. A simple message from Jess, my best friend. But it wasn't the usual "how's your day going?" or "wanna grab lunch?" No, this one had something far more dangerous in it. You won't believe what I just heard. I could already feel my stomach tighten. Jess had always been the type to be a little too eager to gossip, but this time something felt off. I quickly typed back, "What is it?" She didn't answer right away. I sat back, tapping my foot nervously. The seconds stretched into minutes, and my heart rate picked up. I had no idea why, but I knew something was coming. Something that would change everything. Finally, the phone buzzed. "Someone's been talking about you behind your back, and I have proof." My fingers trembled as I read the words. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. Who could it be? What were they saying? My mind was running wild, but I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach. Jess had always been there for me. She was like a sister, someone I could trust with anything. So why was she acting so strange? Why was she texting me like this? Before I could respond, another message popped up. It was a screenshot of a conversation between two people. And there it was. My name, along with words I never thought I'd see tied to it. I heard she's been sneaking around with John. I think they're more than just friends. My blood ran cold. The rumors, the lies, they hit me like a slap to the face. I felt the world around me begin to spin, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. How could anyone think this about me? How could Jess, my best friend, be part of this? The betrayal was as sharp as a knife, and it cut deep. But then, the worst part of it all came. The next message from Jess. "I think you should hear it from me before anyone else gets to you." I stared at the screen. I couldn't believe it. Jess knew exactly what she was doing. She knew how much this would hurt me, and yet, she had done it. She had helped spread the lie, the rumor, the poison that was now slowly taking over my life. I couldn't hold it in anymore. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I typed the only words that felt right. Why? Why would you do this to me? You're supposed to be my friend. I hit send, and the silence that followed was suffocating. I waited for her to respond. The weight of my anger and hurt pressed down on my chest, but as the seconds ticked by, I realized that Jess wasn't going to be the one to apologize. She wasn't going to make things right. And that, more than anything, broke my heart. After what felt like an eternity, her reply came. "You'll pay for this. You'll see." I stared at those words. A sense of dread washed over me. But even as the weight of what she had done settled in, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let this slide. No one, not even my best friend, could get away with something like this. The rage bubbling inside me grew, and I knew exactly what I had to do. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions, working, eating, sleeping, but it all felt empty. The rumor lingered in my mind like a dark cloud that I couldn't escape. Every time I saw a message from Jess, I felt a wave of nausea. But I didn't dare respond. Not yet. I needed to think. I needed to prepare for what was coming. Because I knew Jess wouldn't stop. She was the kind of person who would turn any betrayal into a spectacle, and I had no intention of letting her drag me through the mud without a fight. By the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. My phone buzzed with another message from Jess, and this time I couldn't ignore it. "We need to talk." It was vague, but I knew what that meant. She wanted to fix things, or at least try to manipulate the situation to make herself look better. I wasn't buying it, not after everything. I took a deep breath, staring at my phone screen. Then I made up my mind. I grabbed my coat and rushed out of the apartment, heading straight to the coffee shop we'd been meeting at for years. The familiar scent of coffee and pastries greeted me as I entered. The moment I stepped inside, I spotted Jess sitting at our usual booth by the window, looking as calm as ever. But there was something different about her today. Her smile was a little too tight, her posture too rigid. She was nervous, and that gave me a strange sense of satisfaction. I walked over to the booth without saying a word and slid into the seat across from her. Her eyes flicked to mine, and she tried to force a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hey," she said, her voice shaky. I didn't greet her. Instead, I leaned in, my gaze hard as steel. "You're not sorry, are you?" I said, my voice low but steady. "Not even a little bit." She flinched, but quickly masked it with a fake laugh. "Come on, it's not as bad as you think, it's just some gossip, right?" She leaned back in her seat, crossing her arms. It's not like anyone actually believes it. But I could see right through her. She was trying to downplay it, to minimize the damage she'd caused. I was done pretending I could fix this with a conversation. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. This was betrayal. I slammed my hand on the table, making her jump. "No, Jess, it's not just gossip," I said, my voice rising, the anger finally breaking through. "You intentionally spread a lie about me, about something I've never done, and you think you can just sweep it under the rug? You think I'm just going to forget about this?" She looked uncomfortable, her eyes darting around the room, but she didn't answer. "Why?" I demanded, leaning closer. "Why would you do this to me, after everything?" "We were best friends, Jess. I trusted you." Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but she just stared at me, her face flushing with guilt. "Was it for attention? Was I just a tool for you to get more drama in your life? Because that's what it feels like. You used me. You betrayed me," I continued, each word cutting deeper. "And you know what? You'll pay for this." Jess's eyes widened at my words, but she quickly masked her fear with an attempt to sound casual. "Don't be so dramatic," she said, her voice laced with nervousness. It wasn't like I meant for it to get out of hand. But I wasn't buying her excuses anymore. I stood up from the table, my heart racing with fury, my hands clenched into fists. "It's too late for apologies," I said through gritted teeth. "You've crossed a line that can never be undone. I won't forget this. I'll make sure everyone knows the truth, Jess." Her eyes flickered with a mixture of shock and fear. "Wait, you can't," but I was already walking away, my footsteps quick and purposeful, leaving her sitting there, trying to piece together her shattered version of reality. I could hear her calling after me, but I didn't turn around. It was over. As I stepped out into the cool air, a strange sense of calm washed over me. I'd confronted Jess. I'd said everything that needed to be said. But I wasn't done yet. The battle had just begun. That night, I spent hours on my phone, scrolling through social media, looking for any trace of the rumors that had been circulating. I knew the damage was already done, but I wasn't going to let it end there. I needed to turn the tables. And then, as if the universe was sending me a sign, I found something. A post. A picture of Jess with some of our mutual friends, laughing and having fun. But in the background, just barely visible, was the text of a conversation she'd shared with someone else. Someone who had been in on the rumor. It was all there, in black and white. The lies. The manipulation. I snapped a screenshot. Jess hadn't learned her lesson, and now it was time to show her that I could fight fire with fire. The screenshot burned in my hands as I stared at it. Jess had made a huge mistake. Not only had she spread the rumor about me, but she had also left a trail of evidence behind her, proof of her guilt. It was like she had handed me the ammunition I needed to take her down, and I wasn't going to waste it. I spent the next few hours plotting my next move. The whole time, my heart pounded in my chest. This was it. I wasn't going to let this slide. Not when I had the upper hand. The world was about to find out exactly who Jess really was, and I wasn't going to be the one to let her control the narrative anymore. I knew what I had to do. But first, I needed to make sure I had everything in place. I couldn't just blast the truth out there without preparation. Jess was dangerous when cornered, and I needed to be smart. I had to make sure every word, every action was calculated. The next morning, I took a deep breath and made the call. It wasn't something I wanted to do, but it was necessary. I reached out to our mutual friend group, the ones who had been dragged into this mess by Jess's lies. They deserved to know the truth, too. If Jess thought she could manipulate them, she was sorely mistaken. I was expecting a few hesitant responses, maybe some denials, but the reactions I got were far worse. One by one, they began texting me. The support was overwhelming, and it became clear that Jess's web of deceit had been more fragile than I thought. I didn't want to believe it, but I heard the rumors too. I thought she was just gossiping. But I'm starting to see the pattern. She's been acting so weird lately, and now I get it. The more messages I received, the more my resolve strengthened. Jess had painted herself into a corner, and now she was going to pay. But I wasn't going to let her go down without a fight. She needed to feel the weight of what she had done, and I was going to make sure of it. I knew that the only way to truly hit her where it hurt was to make sure the truth came from her own mouth. And that's when the idea hit me like a ton of bricks. If Jess wasn't going to come clean, then I would force her to. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my contacts, eventually landing on a name I knew would be crucial. Lily, one of the closest people to Jess. She had always been the peacemaker in our group, the one who tried to keep things from escalating. I needed to get to her before Jess had a chance to twist everything in her favor. I dialed Lily's number, my fingers trembling slightly. When she picked up, her voice was cautious. "Hey, what's up? I need to talk to you about Jess," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I know you've heard the rumors, but what you don't know is that she's the one who started them. She's been lying, manipulating, and using everyone she can to make herself look better. And I have proof." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could almost hear her processing my words. I don't know what to say. Jess wouldn't do that. She's my friend. "I get it," I said, my voice softening. "You want to believe the best in her. But she's crossed a line, and I can't stay quiet about it anymore. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm showing you the proof." I sent her the screenshot, the one Jess had so carelessly left behind. It was only a few seconds before the phone buzzed again with Lily's response. "I can't believe this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had no idea. I didn't want to believe it. But now that I see it, I'm not doing this to hurt anyone, Lily," I said, my throat tightening. "But I can't stand by while Jess ruins my life. I need you to help me set the record straight." The silence on the other end felt deafening. It was clear that Lily was torn. But after what felt like an eternity, she finally spoke. "I'll talk to the others. I won't let Jess get away with this. But you have to promise me, this doesn't end with you and her destroying each other." I could hear the weight of her words, and for a moment I considered backing down. But then I thought of everything Jess had done, how easily she had turned her back on me. "There was no going back now, I promise," I said, my voice firm. "But she won't get away with it." The next few days passed in a whirlwind. Jess's lies were unraveling at a speed I hadn't expected. It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion, each brick falling one by one. As Lily spread the truth to the rest of our friends, Jess began to feel the consequences of her actions. It wasn't long before I started receiving messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. They'd all heard the rumors, but now they were hearing the truth. Jess was no longer the person they'd trusted, the friend they'd turned to. She was the villain in her own story. And then came the day I'd been waiting for. Jess called me, her voice trembling on the other end of the line. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, her words rushed, as if she was choking on them. I was just trying to fit in. I didn't think it would hurt you. I never wanted to destroy everything. I could feel her desperation through the phone, but I wasn't moved. Not anymore. You've already done that, Jess, I said, my voice cold. You've destroyed everything. And now, it's your turn to face the consequences. The silence between us stretched for what felt like hours. But in that moment, I felt something shift. The weight I had been carrying for days, weeks even, lifted. I had finally taken control of my own story, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had won. The days that followed Jess's confession were the quietest I'd had in a long time. It wasn't a relief, though. Not exactly. It felt more like waiting for a storm to pass, unsure if the damage had already been done. Jess, despite her words of regret, was still trying to piece her reputation back together. But the truth was out. And once something like that starts to spread, there's no controlling the damage. By the end of the week, things were already beginning to shift. Jess had tried to make amends with a few people, sending texts and calling, trying to salvage whatever was left of our mutual friendships. But it was too late. No one believed her anymore. The truth had spread too far, too fast, and now she was the one being whispered about in corners. I couldn't help but watch from the sidelines as she tried, in vain, to reclaim some semblance of control. The look in her eyes when I saw her at the cafe, the pleading, the desperation, told me everything I needed to know. Jess was a master manipulator, but this time she had no strings left to pull. I had made my peace with what happened. In some strange way, it was almost liberating to have the truth on my side, to know that people were starting to see Jess for what she really was. But I wasn't finished yet. Jess hadn't learned her lesson. She hadn't felt the full weight of what she had done. Not until the consequences truly hit. It was that afternoon when everything started to crumble for her. Jess showed up at the cafe again, but this time I wasn't there to meet her. I'd been expecting her, though. She had been trying to get in touch with me all week, leaving messages and texts, but I had ignored every single one. I knew that nothing she could say would make this right. I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses. Instead, I was meeting with someone who could do what I couldn't. Someone who could make sure Jess faced the full brunt of the fallout. Lily had arranged the meeting. She had become the voice of reason for everyone involved, guiding them through the mess that Jess had created. It was the calm before the storm, and as I arrived at the cafe that afternoon, I knew that the final chapter of this ordeal was about to unfold. Lily was already sitting at our usual table, her face serious, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. When she saw me, she gave a tight smile, but there was a sadness in her eyes. It was the kind of sadness that came from knowing things could never go back to how they were. "Is it done?" I asked, sitting down across from her. She nodded, taking a deep breath before speaking. "The group's on your side now. They've heard everything, and they know the truth. Jess tried to talk to a few of them individually, but they weren't buying it. Some of them even confronted her about it." I leaned forward, absorbing her words. What did she say? She tried to deny it at first, but the proof was everywhere. People are talking, and not in the way she thought. She thought she could talk her way out of it, but the damage is done. Lily paused, looking down at her coffee. She's isolated herself. No one wants to be associated with her anymore. It's like she's a ghost. I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. The aftermath had been swift, and it wasn't just her reputation on the line, it was everything. The lies she had spread had affected not just me, but the whole circle of people we used to call friends. Jess had underestimated the consequences of her actions, and now she was facing the results. "So, what happens now?" I asked, a mix of curiosity and finality in my voice. Lily hesitated before responding. "There's not much more to do, honestly. We can't undo the past. But Jess? She has a lot to answer for." If she doesn't want to lose everything, if she really wants to salvage anything, it's going to take more than just apologies. It's going to take accountability. I nodded, my heart heavy with the knowledge that Jess's actions had not only cost her friendship, but also a sense of trust she would never get back. She had built her life on manipulating people, twisting truths. But now, the tables had turned. It was then that I saw Jess. She walked into the cafe, looking like a different person than the one I had known. Her usual confidence was replaced with a shaky uncertainty. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on me, and for a moment, our gazes locked. There was no more warmth in her eyes, no more of the bond we had shared. Just coldness. And something else. Fear. She hesitated, her eyes flicking to Lily and back to me, before slowly making her way to our table. The moment she reached us, I could see the weight of the situation in her posture, the way her shoulders were slumped, the way her breath hitched. I just wanted to apologize, she said, her voice weak, almost pleading. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at her. This wasn't the Jess I had known, the confident, manipulative friend who always had a plan. This was a broken version, one that had nowhere left to run. I don't think an apology is enough, I said coldly. You've hurt too many people for that to fix anything, she winced, her eyes welling up with tears. Please, I never meant for things to get out of hand. I wanted to feel important. I didn't think it would hurt you. You didn't think it would hurt me? I repeated, my voice rising. Jess, you destroyed my trust. You used me for your own gain, and you thought I wouldn't care? You thought I wouldn't notice? Her hands trembled as she reached for my hand across the table. I pulled it back instinctively, not willing to let her manipulate me again. I never meant to lose you, she whispered, her voice cracking. You were everything to me. But the truth was, I wasn't sure who she was anymore. The person I had trusted had become someone else, someone who would do anything to maintain control. She wasn't my friend anymore. She was a reminder of everything I'd learned about betrayal. I can't fix this, she said softly. I know I can't. You're right, I replied, my voice firm. You can't. She nodded, tears spilling down her face, and for a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered what she had done, and that was enough to erase any sympathy. I'm done, I said, standing up. It's over. Jess didn't move as I left the cafe, her sobs echoing behind me. But I didn't look back. The battle had been fought, and I had won. Jess would have to live with the consequences of her actions, and I would walk away stronger, wiser, and with a heart free from the lies she had once woven around me. It's strange how life can change in the blink of an eye. One moment, everything seems stable, your world, your friends, your reality. The next, it all comes crashing down, like a house of cards that's been blown apart by the very person you thought would protect it. Leaving Jess behind at that cafe, her tear-streaked face forever etched in my memory, felt like a turning point in my life. I had let go of something that had once been so precious to me, something I never thought I would lose. But now, I knew that the cost of holding on was greater than the pain of letting go. As I walked through the streets, the cool breeze brushing against my skin, I felt the weight of everything that had transpired. The lies, the betrayal, the hours of sleepless nights replaying every word Jess had said. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, almost eerily so. I had gotten what I wanted, what I needed. And now, all I had to do was move forward. But the aftermath wasn't over yet. Jess hadn't just hurt me. She had damaged the entire group, the friendships, the trust. And there was still one more person to confront. Myself. It was the first time I had really stopped to think about the bigger picture, the choices I had made, the people I had allowed into my life. How could I have missed it? How had I allowed someone like Jess, someone so skilled at manipulating and controlling others, to weave her way so deeply into my world? And how could I have ignored the warning signs for so long? The questions haunted me, and they made me realize just how much of myself I had given away in the name of friendship. But that was over now. I was stronger than I had been before. I was no longer that person who believed in blind loyalty and trust. I had learned the hard way that people, no matter how close they are, can always surprise you. Sometimes in the worst possible ways. As the days passed, Jess's attempts to contact me grew more desperate. She texted, called, and even showed up at my apartment, but I didn't respond. I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let her back in, not after everything she had done. There was no room for people like her in my life anymore. But then, one afternoon, I received an email from her. At first, I didn't want to open it. But curiosity got the better of me. I clicked it open, my heart racing, as I saw the subject line, "I'm sorry." The message was long, filled with apologies, explanations, and a promise to change. But as I read it, something inside me hardened. I had already heard all of her excuses, seen the false tears, felt the hollow apologies. Words were cheap. The damage had been done, and no amount of pleading could undo it. I scrolled through the message, my eyes landing on the final lines. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know that I never meant to hurt you. I thought I could control everything, but I've lost everything now. And it's too late." Her words, however sincere they seemed, didn't move me. They were a reflection of the same old Jess, the person who couldn't take responsibility for her actions, the one who always found a way to make things someone else's fault. But this time, I wasn't buying it. I wasn't the same person who had blindly believed in her. I had learned too much about myself and about people like Jess. I closed the email and hit delete. It was done. The next few weeks were a blur. I spent time focusing on myself, on healing, on rediscovering who I was outside of Jess and the drama she had caused. The friendships that had been tested by her lies began to rebuild themselves, slowly but surely. I couldn't deny that it had been painful, but it also felt like a fresh start. A chance to surround myself with people who valued honesty, trust, and loyalty. And then, one day, I bumped into Lily. It was at the park, of all places. We hadn't seen much of each other since everything had gone down, but when I saw her sitting on a bench with a book in hand, I couldn't help but smile. She looked up at me, and for a moment I could see the same sadness in her eyes that had been there before. But then, her face softened, and she stood up, giving me a tight hug. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice gentle. "I'm okay," I replied, sitting down beside her. "I'm getting there." We talked for a while, about everything and nothing at all. The conversation was light, a far cry from the heaviness of the past few months. It felt good to talk to someone who wasn't involved in the chaos, someone who had stood by me without judgment or manipulation. Lily paused, her fingers tapping against the book in her lap. "You know," she said slowly, "Jess is a mess right now. She's been trying to get people to listen to her, but I think she's starting to realize that it's too late. People are moving on, and she's left alone." I sighed, the weight of everything we had gone through settling in. I don't feel sorry for her anymore. I did once, but not now. She made her choices. "You're right," Lily said, her voice soft. "But sometimes, people like Jess, people who manipulate and lie, they don't learn until it's too late. And even then, I don't know if they ever truly understand the damage they've done." I nodded, feeling a deep sense of understanding. I think I've learned that lesson too. Sometimes, the hardest part is knowing when to walk away. Lily smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The storm had passed. Jess had done what she had done, and I had done what I had to do. The only thing left to do now was to move on, to rebuild, and to never let the shadows of the past cast a cloud over my future. As the weeks passed, I began to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time: relief. It wasn't a rush of excitement, but more of a quiet peace, a calm that came from knowing the worst was behind me. Jess had played her hand, and I had called her bluff. The truth was out, the lies had been exposed, and now there was nothing more to say. I was no longer the person I had been before this all started. The naive, trusting friend who had been so easily manipulated by someone I thought I could trust. The betrayal, while painful, had shown me the strength I never knew I had. It had opened my eyes to the importance of boundaries, of self-respect, and most of all, of not allowing toxic people to dictate my worth. The more I focused on my own healing, the more I realized just how much energy I had given to people like Jess, people who drained me, who made me doubt myself, and who used me for their own gain. I had spent too long trying to fix other people, trying to please them, thinking that love and loyalty would be enough to make them change. But the truth was, people didn't change unless they wanted to. And Jess didn't want to change. She had shown me that through every lie, every manipulation. By the time the fall came, I was in a much better place. I had reconnected with old friends, the ones who had always been there but had been pushed aside during the drama with Jess. They were the ones who reminded me of who I was before all the chaos, before the lies, and before the heartbreak. I wasn't just a victim of betrayal, I was a survivor, and it felt empowering to own that. One evening, I found myself sitting with a group of those friends at a local bar, laughing, talking, and just enjoying each other's company. It was the kind of night I hadn't had in ages, the kind where you feel completely at ease, where the past is far behind you, and the future feels full of promise. As I looked around at the people who had stuck by me, who had supported me through it all, I realized that I had everything I needed right here. These were the people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. The ones who loved me, not because they wanted something from me, but because they saw me for who I truly was. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had my life back. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And that was enough. It was in that moment, surrounded by friends, when my phone buzzed again. It was a message from Jess. I had stopped reading her messages months ago, but this one had a different tone. It wasn't an apology or a plea for forgiveness. Instead, it was short and to the point. I know I lost everything. But I need you to know that I've changed. I won't ask for forgiveness, but I want you to know that I'm sorry for everything I did. For a moment I sat there, staring at the message, the weight of it sinking in. Jess had finally admitted her wrongs. But was it enough? Was it enough to erase everything she had done? I thought about all the pain she had caused, the years of friendship that had been built on false pretenses, and the way she had tried to tear my world apart. In the end, I had learned that sometimes forgiveness wasn't something you gave to make the other person feel better. It was something you gave yourself, a way to release the hold the past had on you. But I also realized that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. And it didn't mean letting someone back into your life just because they said the right words. Sometimes, walking away was the only way to heal. Sometimes, you had to let go of the people who had hurt you the most in order to make room for the people who would lift you up. I didn't respond to her message. I didn't need to. I had already said everything I needed to say to Jess, face to face, when I walked away from her for the last time. There was nothing more to say. What I had learned more than anything was that I was enough. I was worthy of respect, of love, and of true friendship. And the people who truly mattered, who truly valued me, had already shown up. They were here now, with me, in this moment, the ones who had been there through the hard times and the good. And that was all I needed. With that thought, I put my phone down and looked around the room at the people who had stayed by my side. For the first time in months, I felt a true sense of freedom, a freedom I hadn't realized I'd been missing. The freedom to choose who I let into my life, and the freedom to walk away from anyone who didn't respect me. And in that moment, I knew without a doubt I was going to be just fine.